on ELN Morning.
VPs and SLC. The vice presidential nominees face off in Salt Lake City for their only debate. The highlights and local analysis straight ahead.
Voting in Alamance. With the deadline to register to vote here in North Carolina tomorrow, why students are voting here and not at home.
And the local hustle. Why one local business is looking to restart retail next week.
Today, October 8th, 2020.
This is ELN Morning.
Well, good morning and welcome to ELN Morning. I'm Baylor Rodman.
And I'm Isabella Seman.
Well, it was a big night last night for vice presidential nominees Mike Pence and Kamala Harris as they faced off for the first time during the vice presidential debate and the only time in Salt Lake City, Utah. Both candidates dodged some critical questions while providing some contrasting views on everything from coronavirus to the Supreme Court.
American people have witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want to raise taxes. They want to bury our economy under a $2 trillion Green New Deal, which you were one of the original co-sponsors of in the United States Senate.
There's a lot to unpack this morning, but we are in good hands with political historian and Elon professor Mark Dahlhaus.
Professor Dahlhaus, good morning to you, and thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning. It's good to be with you.
So let's hear it. What are your key takeaways, do you think, from the debate last night?
Yeah, for me, this debate, both candidates, I think, did what they needed to do. If you're the vice presidential candidate, you do not want to be the lead story the next morning. And I think both candidates accomplished that. I think really, in terms of that, I think it was a draw. I do think, however, that it's easy to miss really the historical significance of the debate last night. Whoever wins the presidential election in a few weeks will be the oldest president in U.S. history. And so really what we saw last night, in addition to a vice presidential debate, perhaps was a pre-presidential debate between two people, one of whom is very likely to be president of the United States in a few years. So I think there was a lot of significance there, as well as the fact that it was a historical moment in that a woman of color for the first time was on the debate stage as a nominee of a major party.
Now, Professor Dahlhaus, you said that you thought it was a draw. Do you think the debate last night changed the minds of any undecided voters? And also, did this debate hold more weight than any other vice presidential debate before?
Yeah, historically, vice presidential debates, they're interesting in the moment. They provide some news the next morning. But in terms of an election turning on it, or in terms of great blocks of voters moving because of a vice presidential debate, that has not been the case. And I did not see anything last night that suggests that that would be the case this year. I think that if the polls are correct, the number of undecided voters is quite small this year. I think I'll go with the conventional wisdom and say I think most people at this point have probably made up their minds. I think if anything, I think what happened was that for the partisans on both sides, I think this probably confirmed their belief in their candidate and belief in the ticket.
Sure, yeah. So I know you touched on this a little bit, but there are certainly some questions that were left unanswered, as you said, both of them referring to their boss's age, right? And
right.
About that transfer of power. But was there something else also maybe on policy that you wanted to hear from both candidates that you felt like you didn't get last night?
Yeah, I do. I think for both of them, I do. I think that Senator Harris did not answer the question about the Democrats' plans for expanding the Supreme Court. She artfully dodged it twice, and I think that will be an issue for the rest of the campaign. Conversely, I don't think Vice President Pence spoke to the Trump administration's record on the coronavirus. He used that as really a springboard to pivot to his talking points. And both of them were skilled in that way. I give them points for that. But those are two areas that I think we could have heard a lot more.
Okay, moving on, Professor Dollhouse. So this morning it was announced that the next presidential debate will be virtual. Now, we haven't seen candidates in two different locations since the Nixon-Kennedy debate.
Right.
So what kind of landscape does this change for viewers?
Well, and subsequent to that, there's been news this morning that President Trump has said he will not participate in a virtual debate. So that was within the last hour, I believe. And so if that's the case, it's possible that Vice President Biden could have 90 minutes to himself, assuming that the commission proceeded with the debate. I think, if anything, if in fact a virtual debate does come about with the two candidates, I would hope, for the sake of civic discussion and more information about their positions, that it would be a toned-down affair and more informational.
Absolutely, Professor Dollhouse, it's always a pleasure, and thank you so much for speaking with us this morning.
Thanks very much.
Well, with the deadline to register to vote here in North Carolina coming up tomorrow, some students are deciding to register here in Elon. I spoke with executive members of Alamance County Republican and Democratic parties about how students could potentially change the outcome of some of those contested races. Elon Votes has so far registered more than 25% of undergraduate students for the first time, placing Elon as the 8th highest university in the nation that uses TurboVote. Of the over 1,500 first-time voters at Elon, many are also choosing to register here in Alamance County.
I think people should think of Elon as part of the community more than we do right now. Although it can feel like a bubble sometimes, we are part of this community. We should be active in this community.
For Wood, it's about making sure his vote counts.
Some recent changes that have been made with the mailing service. I was uncomfortable doing an absentee ballot from my state, which is the state of Alabama.
A higher number of students voting in our surrounding neighborhood could certainly impact the outcome of not only those statewide races, but also contested local ones. Chair of Alamance County Democrats, Elaine Berry, says she believes students can make all the difference to turn Alamance blue this November.
I will tell you, in 2018, I worked for Erica McAdoo, who was a young candidate running for state legislature, and she was a first-time candidate. She lost by 298 votes. So to ask me that question is, it can make all the difference in the world.
Meanwhile, Alamance County Republicans Chair Ben York says he thinks there's an assumption that more students register to vote throughout the county is bad for the Republican Party. But he believes in the end, they'll turn out to vote in his party's favor.
It's whether those folks make an effort to learn about the different candidates.
Both party chairs believe that students have the right to vote here in Alamance County, even as some vote here purely due to the competitive nature of the state in presidential elections.
I think that should be allowed because they live here. If they're living here, whether it's in a dorm, whether they're renting a home.
I think it's ridiculous to say, why should these people vote here? Some of them are going to stay here. Some are going to make some of them are going to make this their home. And I would venture to say most of them are going to make it a better place for all of us.
For a full guide on how to register and absentee voting in Alamance County, visit elonnewsnetwork.com and click the Politics tab.
One of the races students voting locally will have the opportunity to weigh in on is the 24th Senate District for North Carolina, which covers Alamance and part of Guilford counties. With incumbent Republican Senator Rick Gunn stepping down, the race is down to Democrat J.D. Wooten and Republican Amy Galey. Wooten is an Air Force veteran turned intellectual property attorney, and Galey currently serves as an Alamance County Commissioner. While the two agree on some issues, such as increasing the availability of broadband internet for students, the two differed in other areas. For Wooten, education is the most important issue.
Got to be investing in educators that are equipped and trained to teach our children, to make them prepared for today's economy. Some of the specific line items of where we put budget resources during a pandemic might change, but the overall approach of making sure that we're fully funding schools and that we're investing in our children.
For Galey, the most important issue facing North Carolina voters is workforce development.
Businesses can go a lot of different places now, and we need to have an infrastructure in Eastern Guilford and in Alamance counties that is supportive to businesses being able to conduct, their business in the way that they're going to profit and the whole community really blossoms and grows.
For more information on where each candidate stands on higher education, healthcare, and reopening North Carolina, visit elonnewsnetwork.com.
Hurricane Delta is going to bring some rain this weekend. I'll have your Phoenix 5-day forecast coming up.
Our Anna Terry is live on Citroen Plaza with your Phoenix 5-day forecast. Anna, what can you tell us?
Thank you, Baylor and Bella. It is a beautiful day outside with not a cloud in the sky and a temperature of 70 degrees. And as the day goes on, it is going to get hotter, and tonight we will have a temperature of 75 degrees. Now, as we head into the rest of the week, on Friday, we are going to have cloudy skies with a low of 60 degrees and a high of 73. Now, this weekend, we are going to see some heavy downpour. On Saturday and Sunday, we will have highs in the 70s and lows in the 60s. Now, on Monday, it will continue this rain, and we will have a low of 60 and a high of 80 degrees. And on Tuesday, we will also see more rain with a low of 46 and a high of 73. That is your Phoenix 5-day forecast. Back to you in the studio.
Anna Terry, thank you so much.
And coming up, the uphill battle facing local businesses continues despite students' returns to campus. We'll have more after the break.
Starting first thing tomorrow, ELN University's so-called social hiatus will end. Students will now be allowed to have limited guests in their residence halls, and in-person dining will resume, among other changes. We asked students how they're feeling about this, and this is what they said.
Because it means that we're moving in the right direction. None of us want to be getting into a situation where we all have to, quarantine in our dorms totally. And I don't think any of us really enjoyed level 3. But it's really nice to know that people are taking the mandates and precautions seriously, and that we're seeing a decrease in people that are in quarantine.
We did a good job of containing the cases. It seemed like it was just the sports teams, the clusters on the sports teams.
I think in the number of cases it reflects. So I don't think it was too soon to go down to level 2, but I do think the social hiatus that Connie Book implied was a good idea.
That's all the news we have for you today. Thanks so much for joining us.
For all the news when we're not on the air, visit our website, elonnewsnetwork.com, and follow us on social media at Elon News Network.
Have a great week, Elon.